Prozent gleichen Verluste zum letzten Mal. AfD.
These were the scenes that played out over and over again all across the European continent this weekend in what was nothing less than a stunning political earthquake. The so-called far right, the radical right, have officially arisen as the single most powerful political force in the whole of Europe, and the world will never be the same. We're going to take a look at what happened over the weekend, why it happened, and what it means for the rise of a new conservative age sweeping the globe. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you stay sane in these insane times. So make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. And gang, let's dive right in. Over the weekend, Europeans across the continent went to the polls for the European Parliament elections. Nearly 400 million citizens in 27 countries cast their votes to elect representatives from their respective countries to serve as lawmakers in the European Parliament in the Belgian capital of Brussels. In many respects, the EU elections are seen really as something akin to our midterm elections, where voters get to voice their approval or their disapproval of their parties in power. And the message voters sent in this election was heard loud and clear all over the world. When the exit polls were released throughout the night, in nation after nation after nation, the nationalist populist right surged to heights never seen before in modern European politics. There was nothing short of a political earthquake over this weekend, and its aftershocks have left the European political elite absolutely stunned. It all started in the Netherlands on Thursday night when the nationalist populist extraordinaire Geert Wilders and the Dutch Freedom Party went from 0 seats in the European Parliament to winning upwards of 20% of their seats. It was an ominous sign for the European establishment that the populist right was indeed poised to surge throughout these elections. Then in Germany, their populist party, the Alternative for Deutschland, they crushed the Liberal Green Party to become the second largest party in Germany, and now officially the single most popular party in all of Eastern Germany. In Italy, Giorgia Meloni's Brothers of Italy swept their elections, garnering 30% of the vote. Again, in a multi-party system, that's extraordinary. 1 in every 3 Italians voted for the Brothers of Italy. In Hungary, Viktor Orban's Fidesz party continues to absolutely dominate their politics. Not only does he have a supermajority at home, but Fidesz won their elections with a commanding 44% of the vote in the European Parliament. And we could go on and on and on. But the huge news of the night, the crown jewel in this continent-wide right-wing tsunami, was the massive victory for National Rally in France. Now, I'm going to have a separate video on France later today because the developments there are just so absolutely gigantic, with Macron dissolving parliament and calling for snap elections as a result of what happened over the weekend. But here's a snapshot of the gains that National Rally has made in France over the years. Check this out. In 1999, National Rally won only 5% of the vote. In 2004, they almost hit 10%, but then they went backwards in 2009. They fell to 6%. Take a look at this. In 2014, they surged to nearly 25%. Then in 2019, the last European election, they got around the same amount, just around 23%. But now, as of this weekend, National Rally cracked the 30% mark. They're clocking in about 32% of the vote. It was an absolute stunner. Again, just to drive this home of what an astonishing victory this was, National Rally is now poised to be the single largest political party in the European Parliament. Absolutely astonishing. Politico is calling it Europe's Trump moment. But of course, the question is why? Why is this happening right now in Europe? Well, that is what we're going to answer. But first, gang, you got to click on that link below and treat yourself and your family and friends to the most amazing soap I've ever encountered, made by our good friends over at Old Country Soap. Made on a farm in South Dakota using traditional techniques, they use only locally sourced special ingredients without the harsh chemicals that can dry out your hair and your skin. Every bar includes pure and unfiltered bentonite clay that works wonders. It helps to soothe and relieve dry and sensitive skin. It's known for its healing properties that help with psoriasis and eczema. It also pulls dirt and oil from pores, helping to clear up acne. I mean, gang, it's amazing stuff. It works great for hair. You can use it to shave. It's safe for your pets. And of course, to top it all off, it's made right here in the USA. Use promo code Turley for an exclusive 20% discount off your order. And every order will include an extra gift. Just pay the shipping. It's more than worth it. So go ahead, reward yourself with the amazing Patriot product. You will not be disappointed. Click on that link below right now. Politico calling this Europe's Trump moment actually is a little short-sighted. It's an ironic headline because in many ways, Europe is actually ahead of the United States when it comes to the rise of nationalist populism, what the media likes to call the far right, right? That's what you always hear, the far right, the radical right. More and more people are asking, what the heck is so far right about protecting your borders, protecting your economy, protecting what makes your national identity unique, right? But we need to underscore the fact that nationalist populists have been on the rise, on the ascent in Europe since the late 1990s, when the United States was being led by freaking Bill Clinton. It's just taken longer in Europe because the European Parliament, the bullies in Brussels, as we affectionately refer to them as, exercise inordinate influence in member nations' domestic politics and have thus far successfully quelled a number of the nationalist populist movements that have arisen over the years, until this weekend, of course. Now, I appreciate the shout out from our good friend Rich Barris over at the People's Pundit. He tweeted out, as Dr. Turley Talks has been discussing for a year, the populist right is ascendant in Europe. Huge wins. Globalists have failed at governing and refuse to acknowledge it, now suffer defeats. Thanks for that, Rich. It's actually been well over a year that I've been talking about this. These are the results we were hoping for back in 2019, the last European Parliament elections that we covered extensively. The populist right certainly surged, but they fell way short of what we saw over this weekend. When all is said and done, what's driving this nationalist populist surge is what's called post-security politics. And this is becoming the dominant political paradigm in Europe. Post-security politics. I actually wrote about this phenomenon back in 2018 in my book, The New Nationalism, where I introduced this notion of post-security politics, which describes the kind of political reactions that happen when the three basic securities that are supposed to be guaranteed by the nation state, border security, economic security, and cultural security, all erode under the pressures of globalization. So globalization, of course, has eroded border security, primarily through getting rid of our borders, and in particular opening up Europe to mass migration. Globalization has eroded economic security with something called a global division of labor, where manufacturing and industrial jobs are shipped out to third world nations, all the while capital and finance are relocated to urban centers, leaving rural populations highly unemployed. And globalization's eroded cultural security by recasting a nation's culture, customs, and traditions as now bigoted, racist, all kinds of phobic, along with the radical demographic changes happening through globalism's propensity towards open borders. So you could see post-security concerns form a loop. Border insecurity feeds into economic insecurity, which feeds into cultural security, which in turn feeds back into border insecurity. So the three securities that we used to rely on with the nation-state project, border security, economic security, and cultural security, have all eroded under globalism. So what we saw over the weekend was a massive backlash where more and more populations are once again reasserting their national and economic sovereignty and defending their customs, cultures, and traditions as mechanisms of resistance against the anti-cultural processes of globalization and its secular aristocracy. And this backlash is what scholars call civilizational populism, where the people are rising up against a ruling elite that they see as a clear and present danger to their national, economic, and cultural security. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what happened over the weekend in Europe. And so now, of course, with all of that, people are asking what's to come of the EU. Is the new populist parliament going to dismantle the EU? What should we expect? Well, I don't see anyone openly advocating the dismantling of the EU, but they are calling for the restoration of national sovereignty from member nations. Look to see the more populist wings try to reconfigure the European Parliament in a more of a federalist structure by imposing very strict limitations on its jurisdiction so as to reassert national sovereignty for the 27 individual member nations. As many of you know, one of the biggest points of contention, well, perhaps indeed the single major point of contention, certainly led to Britain leaving the EU, that has been the issue of national sovereignty. To what extent did member nations surrender their national sovereignty when they joined the EU? To what extent did they surrender control over their immigration standards, over their own economic policies, over their own environmental policies when they joined the bullies in Brussels? That question promises to move radically in favor of limiting Brussels' continent-wide jurisdiction, all the while maximizing the sovereignty of individual member nations. Another thing that the new right is certainly intent on doing is dismantling the radical green initiatives in the European Parliament and reversing the greenflation that's been ravaging Europe. Remember, a lot of this stems from the European farmer revolt that's been sweeping throughout the continent over the last year, and protests against WEF-inspired rules, regulations, and trade deals that are adversely affecting their livelihood and their ability to farm. The protests have amassed in Brussels, the seat of the EU, where numerous tractors and trucks have sealed off streets to close the European headquarters in order to pressure the EU's agricultural ministers to back off from the more draconian environmental regulations. And they've been very, very successful in doing precisely that. A number of European Union plans to impose more radical climate restrictions on the farmers have been officially dropped under this kind of pressure. Well, with this new European Parliament, this populist parliament, we can expect virtually all of these green initiatives to be dropped and dismantled as well. That will almost certainly be one of the first things we see coming out of this new populist parliament. So the restoration of national sovereignty, the dismantling of the green cartel, those look to be the two major priorities of this incoming populist parliament. We'll have to see what comes of their Ukraine policy. I mean, the EU up until this point, as you know, has basically just been rubber stamping whatever NATO wants when it comes to Ukraine. These new populists, at least in terms of their rhetoric, are far less agreeable to NATO and what so many of them see as the hopelessly failed policy in Ukraine. We'll have to see what comes of it. Of course, we'll be keeping a very, very close eye on how things develop here, but there is no question a political earthquake rocked the entire continent of Europe this weekend. Post-security politics have finally taken shape to recalibrate the political order, and the world will never be the same. Here's your opportunity to tell big tech tyrants where they can stick it. Click on that link below and download our brand new cancel-proof Turley Talks app, and you can sign our special declaration of restoration. That's our petition to big tech that declares a new day is dawned, they are no longer in control, and we are taking our nation back. We've already got over 1,000 signatures of courageous patriots, and yours is next. Click on that link below or go to fight.turleytalks.com right now.